Well, would you look at what we have here? Another GarageBand companion. 2018 GMC Sierra. It's here for a number of problems. Got 137,000 kilometers. Customer says the MIL was on up until about a week ago, and he was experiencing slightly longer than normal crank to start condition, as well as a refueling problem. He had a problem putting fuel in it, like it was kicking off the nozzle like it was full. He said that the last time he bought fuel, and I see he's got just over half a tank, it filled seemingly normally, and then shortly after that the MIL went off. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a fault code in history. It's probably related to EVAP system performance. Maybe it's got a plug vent. It's also here for a coolant leak. He's got a coolant loss problem. So let's throw the scanner on this thing and scan it and see what codes it has to offer. So I've loaded the vehicle history because I worked on this before. I think I did an O2 sensor a couple of years ago. No, that's not a good thing. Okay. Let's do a code scan of all controllers while we listen to my furnace blow. Vent performance. Well, that would concur with his difficulty fueling. 446. Evaporative emission system, vent system performance. What else we got? Front video display signal out. Low voltage in the HVAC. Low voltage in the power steering module. Now, I don't think the vent problem would cause an issue starting the vehicle, but it did definitely affect fueling the vehicle. So I don't want to run this thing too long and get it hot because I want to check for the coolant leak. So we're underneath this truck looking for coolant leaks, and there's no evidence of coolant around the water pump, weep hole, timing cover area. Nothing on the bottom of the transmission or the engine oil pan or the back of the motor. But if we go up here and look in this front corner here, you can see the orange coolant clinging to the bottom of the wiring harness there, just below the seam on the radiator. A little bit of evidence on that side as well. So I think it's not coming from the hose clamp there. It's coming from the side tanks on the rad, the aluminum tanks, or the aluminum core to the plastic tank. So this thing's going to need a radiator. I'll check it from the top and see if I can see anything visual from the top. The vent solenoid on this thing is right here. So I want to see if it clicks on and off with the command. And then that convoluted hose going out there goes to a filter way up here by the filler door. And if that filter is plugged, and I've had that on another one, then it can't vent correctly. So I'm going to try, where is that thing? I'm taking that. Oh, that line is molded on there. I thought it was connected to it. Blow the filter out with compressed air. But first I'm going to make sure that the solenoid clicks, this solenoid here. So I'm going to go into functional tests and output controls. And one of these is the vent solenoid. We'll command this vent solenoid on and off. I got the key in the run position. We should be able to hear it clicking. It's quiet in here. Not venting is on. Venting is off. So I think we're gonna try see if that it's physically clicking. You can hear it. I hope the camera's picking that up. So I'm gonna take the line off and make sure it's normally open. I'm gonna try blowing through it with compressed air. So I've taken the line off of the canister. The plastic clip broke, and I'll show you how to fix that after with a tie wrap. And I've inserted a piece of 5/8 plastic hose in there so I can use a rubber tip air nozzle to blow compressed air in there. And I'm going to set this up so you can see if any dust comes out. The vent solenoid should be venting now because it's normally open, I believe. I noticed when I put compressed air to it that it stops if I put lots of air pressure to it. The stupid air nozzle is leaking. I'm going to take this hose off at the canister here. Is that cracked? Stupid nozzle leaks like crazy. So I'm going to take the line off at the outlet of the vent. I'm going to see if I can cut that line. I'm going to take this line off here. Looks like it's cracked. I'm not sure, but there was no air coming out. But when I put air pressure in here, it's like a check valve action. It stops flowing. So I'm going to take this line off. So I managed to get that hose off. It's long enough. I had to cut it, but it's long enough that I can slide it back on. I'm putting the air nozzle into the hose now. Lots of dust came out. Well, not really sure if that was enough to cause a problem or if the vent solenoid is malfunctioning. The only way we're going to know is to go and fuel it up when it's empty and see how it takes fuel. I'm going to reconnect this. I'll show you how to fix that broken clip. So you can put a tie wrap through that thing and it won't go off. It won't come off. It probably wouldn't come off anyways because of the nature of it. There's no significant pressure. And I used a heat gun to warm up the pipe and slid it back on, and I secured it with a tie wrap. It's just the vent. So we're going to do a purge and seal test on this thing and watch the pressure in the fuel tank. Let's command this up to, you got to watch it doesn't go too low a vacuum in the tank because it'll actually set a device over limit and abort the test. So the fuel tank vent solenoid is not venting, and it's building up a vacuum. We've got about just over half a tank, so it takes a little longer to build up a vacuum. And then when I click this seal button up here, it should actually hold vacuum in the tank. So I sealed it, and it's leaking off like crazy. So there's definitely a leak in the system, whether that's the top of the fuel tank rusted or something, or that purge or that vent solenoid leaking. Let's try it again. Yeah, that's leaked off like crazy. So I'm surprised it didn't set a gross leak code. Why it set that vent solenoid code. Well, let's smoke test it. So I got the smoke tester set up, and we're in the leak test mode, and we can see that we have a gross leak here. But I need to activate the vent solenoid to close it. So I've got the key on. Not venting. I heard it click, and that should decrease, and it's not. So we're going to put it in smoke mode and check to see if we can see where the smoke's coming out. So I'm going to raise this up on the hoist. So the smoke is coming from the vent, and the vent solenoid is energized, which should close it. And it's not closing, so I suspect occasionally this solenoid, I should take that hose off and then smoke it and plug this off to make sure we don't have any leaks on the top of the tank, because these are bad for rusty fuel pumps. Hate like hell to fix that and then find out that, well, if I take it off here, because that one's convenient to remove, and block this, it shouldn't have a leak. I'm going to make sure of that. So I've taken the vent hose off of the canister, and you can hear my smoke machine pressure regulation kicking off and on. So we're going to check the flow rate. So now we can see the system is pretty much sealed. Yeah, we're down to less than 10 thou going down. The pressure is limited to about 1.5 psi. So we'll get our vent solenoid for this thing and replace it. I wonder why the solenoid fails. That's like fine powder, like flour. It's obviously gotten past that filter. No wonder the solenoid fails. So I wonder if we could route that vent somewhere else other than inside the wheel well. Maybe up towards the front of the vehicle, up in the engine bay, instead of behind in front of the left front tire. I've ordered a new solenoid. So I had to do a voiceover here because I had a problem with my microphone. This is the part number that I received from Napa, and it turns out it's not the correct one, but this is what we're going to try to put into the vehicle. So as you can see, the replacement one has a longer vent line going to the charcoal canister. So what I decided to do, because I can't get the right one, is to take the vent line off of the original vent solenoid and install it. So I routed the vent line up to the front of the cab area under the hood and secured it to the brake lines below the master cylinder, and now you can see that it appears to be leaking, but I haven't energized the vent solenoid yet. In a second I will. Now you can see it's dropping now because of the volume of air above the fuel level in the tank, which is about just over half a tank. It takes a few minutes to drop down to 10 thou. So once we get down to 10 thou, there's no leak. So we're going to run a purge and seal test next. So after about 90 seconds, it's actually dropped down to around 20 thousandths of an inch leak, and it actually goes lower than that, down to below 10 thou. So there's no leaks anymore, and when I energize the vent solenoid, or de-energize the vent solenoid, you can see that the ball pops back up again. So we're going to run a purge and seal test. So investigating that coolant leak, it's noted that it's leaking, it's seeping from the top of the radiator from where the core attaches to the actual header on the aluminum. So this thing's going to eventually need a rad. I added a couple of GM seal tablets, and the cooling system is pretty much full, but I'll top it up, give it back to the customer, and he can decide what he wants to do with it. Eventually he's going to need to replace the rad. So here is the new vent solenoid installed. I put an extra hose clamp on there, and I routed that vent line, instead of back to the back, I routed it along the frame on top of the brake lines, secured it to the brake lines, made sure it was away from the exhaust, and tied it up to the brake lines under the master cylinder. So it should be good, and less dust. I remember back in 2000 to 2003, GM had a bulletin to relocate the vent filter from where it was beside the actual vent itself to a location on top of the transmission. They wanted you to run 5/8 heater hose up to the transmission, way up in there. But I think this is just as good. It's away from the exhaust. So we're going to run a purge and seal test. Loading it with the scan tool right now. Continue. I like to graph the data while I do a purge and seal test because it's visual. And now you'll see that when I turn on the purge solenoid, it builds vacuum very quickly. Look how fast it goes down now. Watch you don't go below 8 inches of water, because that will set a device limit. 1 inch of water is like 0.2 psi, so it's very low. And in a second we're going to click on seal, and now the purge solenoid is closed and the vent solenoid is closed, and you can see that it's holding pressure, or vacuum I should say. So this one looks like it's fixed now. It's got to go through a couple of drive cycles to run the monitor and pass, but I'm sure it's going to be just fine. So we'll go ahead and clear the codes out of the computer eventually here, and call this one fixed. Thanks for watching.